See so many names.
Let's wait for another minute while we admit everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are, or good night, or good evening, even. Okay, I think we're good to start now. Feel free to test the chat feature to see if you want to ask any questions or you have any thoughts. You can just type it in. But if you want to talk later or ask your questions directly, you can use the hand raise feature, but that's during the moderated discussion later on. So, shall we start? Okay. Good morning to our colleagues in Thailand and a very warm afternoon to our guests joining us from Australia and beyond. Welcome to the MAIDS-GRID Talk, Expert Research Seminar number 2. This seminar series is a special initiative conceived and managed by the PhD students of the MAIDS-GRID program at Chulalongkorn University. We aim to bridge academic research with the pressing socio-economic and political realities of Southeast Asia. Today is particularly timely as Thailand makes history as the first Southeast Asian nation to legalize marriage equality. We are forced to look beyond the headlines. We must ask, how did we get here? And what role did popular culture play in this victory? To help us unpack this, we are honored to have Dr. Thomas Baudinette. He's a senior lecturer in Global Cultures, School of International Studies, Macquarie University, a cultural anthropologist. His research explores the role of popular culture plays in shaping knowledge about gender and sexuality across East and Southeast Asia. His first book is Regimes of Desire, Young Gay Men, Media and Masculinity in Tokyo. His second book is Boys Love Media in Thailand, Celebrity, Fans, and Transnational Asian Queer Popular Culture, which you can also find in Kinokuniya in Bangkok. Just 2 weeks ago, I just saw it. And Dr. Thomas is currently working on 3 other book projects, an edited collection titled Riding the Thai Wind, Globalizing Thai Media, Transnational Fandom and Soft Power Potential, the updated English language edition of Akiko Hori and Mori Naoko's seminal text BL, a BL textbook, and a monograph tentatively titled Queer Fantasies of Asia, Japanese and Korean Media Fandom in the Philippines. Today, his presentation titled Marriage Equality, Thai BL Culture and Queer Soft Power extend his deep work on celebrity, fandom, and the political mandate now placed on contemporary Thai idols. Before I hand over the floor, a quick reminder that this is a 90-minute session. We will have 60 minutes for the presentation, followed by a 30-minute moderated discussion. Please feel free to type your questions in the chat box at any time. This session will be recorded and uploaded to MAIDS-GRID YouTube channel. Dr. Baudinette, we are eager to explore how young fans are demanding more than just pink washing from their idols. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the very warm welcome, Jazreen. And also, I extend my thank you to everyone at the MAIDS Grid program at Chula, Hannah, of course, who reached out to me. and the faculty advisors who also graciously welcomed me to this event. I need to apologize in advance. I am currently having a slight cold, so I may have some issues with my voice, and I might have to occasionally stop and take a break, especially if I start coughing. So apologies in advance. As I mentioned in the chat, I also just want to extend my greetings to everyone who came today. Thank you for making time. I see quite a few friends and colleagues and students that I'm familiar with in the name, so it's lovely to see you all. Um, and for those who have yet to meet me or who I have yet to meet, thank you very much for joining. A special warm welcome, of course, to the students in the MAIDS-GRID program at Chulalongkorn. So I'm just going to quickly share my screen. I'm going to try my best to stick to the 60 minutes, but I realize that I've, as always, bitten off way more than I can chew. So I'm going to have to talk about quite a lot today. So the presentation is a somewhat summary slash extension of some of the more recent publications I've had come out on questions relating to Thai boys love culture and questions surrounding its political nature and its impact, if any, on questions around LGBTQ plus rights and especially marriage equality within the Thai context. So I just want to start today with a brief anecdote of my when I first learned the happy news about marriage equality. I wasn't actually in Bangkok at the time. I was in the Philippines, and I was there doing field work towards that book project that Jay mentioned very briefly. But of course, I was very enthusiastic and very excited to learn the news. Very early. So you know, around the passing of marriage equality in the middle of 2024, after many decades of activism on behalf of activist organizations, educational organizations, etc., as well as parliamentarians. Um, but after significant amounts of sustained focused activism in the late 2010s, early 2000s, particularly driven by youth activists. So, you know, I was seeing all of the news, I was celebrating, and I was also at the time reflecting on a series that had recently concluded earlier that year that was quite dear to my heart, called Cherry Magic, which was a Thai BL series starring one of my, actually not one of, my most popular Thai BL actors, Te Tawan and Yutitipum. And this story actually concluded with a kind of mock marriage ceremony. And I remember when that episode had aired back in March of 2024, I had actually made a tweet kind of on my Twitter account, just talking about the significance of seeing, you know, a representation of a marriage ceremony in a Thai BL series in the final episode of this important and very popular series. And how it was representative of more than just the simple fan service or the good feelings and the feels that we get when a fan watches a BL product. And I made the argument, and it resonated with a few people, that this was a political statement on behalf of the BL industry, kind of laying claim to and participating in the broader celebration of the road towards marriage equality. And then what happens a few months later? The Senate of Thailand legalizes marriage equality. And at that moment, I once again turned to Twitter because, as I mentioned, I was in the Philippines and I was witnessing discussions and witnessing Thai fans of BL celebrating this moment. Now, this series, Cherry Magic, the Thai live action is actually an adaptation of an original manga comic written by a Japanese author named Toyota Yu. And actually, on the day that marriage equality passed, Toyota Yu, the author of Cherry Magic, actually celebrated marriage equality in Thailand with a tweet that went viral and in which they stated, "Congratulations, Karen and Archie, the names of the characters in the Thai version, can get married now." And one of the big funny things to fans of Tay New is that the day that marriage equality was announced as towards legalization in Thailand, the 19th of June 2024, was actually the day in the TV show when the couples got married. And naturally, the production company behind Cherry Magic, GMM the largest producer of BL series in Thailand, leaped on this and made a post which translates in English as, today will be another beginning of Karan and Archie's married life. So here we see the entanglement of BL production with debates over marriage equality. And then fast forward to 2025, when marriage equality becomes law, when it takes effect in Thailand, and Thailand joins Nepal and Taiwan as being the only nation states in the Asian region to legalize marriage equality, and of course the first Southeast Asian nation to have done so. So I am predominantly an anthropologist. I'm not a political scientist, but as is clearly the case, to study a popular culture form such as boys' love, which I've been talking about a lot, and I will properly define for those of you who aren't familiar with it soon, um, always already involves thinking about queer questions because this form of popular culture, I argue in my book, Boys Love Media in Thailand, which Jay mentioned is available. If you happen to have a spare thousand or so baht lying around, you can buy a copy in Kinokuniya and most kinos in Bangkok if you happen to be there. And that's something you could do if you're interested. But I've been interested in the what it means for a popular culture form celebrating and focused on queer romance, the romance between two members of the same sex, and the popular fandom that has emerged around that in both Thailand and abroad. What this means for knowledge around gender and sexuality, and naturally, this ultimately brings up political questions. Now, this term queer, I think, is important. We need to be careful with how we use it. I always define it quite closely whenever I give presentations such as these, just in case people aren't familiar with the radical tradition of queer theory within which I operate. So for me, queer is not an identity category, and I'm not even indeed interested in determining whether or not the contents or the representational politics of Thai BL are legitimate or authentic. What I'm interested in is the kind of effects it has on the world. So I draw upon a tradition of queer theory that is about celebrating queerness as a radical challenge to whatever is considered normative or whatever is considered common sense. I draw upon a very famous definition of queer by queer theorist David Halperin, who defines queer as whatever is at odds with the normal, the legitimate, and the dominant. And you'll notice that in Halperin's definition, this has nothing to do with sexuality. Although historically speaking, and most traditionally when we talk about queer, we are talking about the frustration and the destruction even of heteronormativity and systems of political and cultural expression and repression that limit human sexuality only to heterosexuality. And hence queer can also be, according to Eve Kosofsky-Sedgwick, quote, the open mesh of possibilities, gaps, overlaps, dissonances and resonances, lapses and excesses of meaning when the constituent elements of anyone's gender or of anyone's sexuality aren't made or even can't be made to signify monolithically. Okay? So ultimately, queer is an anti-identitarian and anti-normative force, and it pushes back against heteronormativity as well as other forms of norms. So because Thai BL as a genre is about celebrating the romance and sexual attraction between men in particular, it should be always considered as a queer popular culture form because of it pushing back against heteronormativity. That's my main understanding of the genre. So I think most people in the room, the virtual room, are well aware of the fact that Thai boys love, or what is known actually in Thai language as CDY, have really exploded. This is a hugely important and monolithic form of popular culture within Thailand. We can trace it back to, in terms of actual Thai media production, the production of BL content in the form of comics and short stories can actually be traced to around the late 90s, early 2000s. But it was really the emergence of these BL series, television series that are adaptations of Thai novels that we can say was when BL moved into a really mainstream space. So between 2014, when scholars such as myself argue the first ever official BL series was broadcast in Thailand. It was called Lovesick, until I just used 2024 as a kind of cutoff point, but we've seen like almost 100 series a year being produced. Like the amount of production is actually fairly excessive. And of course, it's even grown further with the important emergence of a GL series industry alongside Thai BL. So this is just a few pictures of some series that are currently either in production or planned for production in by GMMTV, that company I mentioned earlier, for either broadcast this year or next year. These aren't just popular in Thailand itself, and as I'm sure if you're in Bangkok, you go anywhere, you can see this stuff, but it's transnationally consumed around the world, across Asia, Latin America, North America, East and Western Europe, even in Australia. My students are familiar with it. I gave a lecture on it to undergraduates recently, and I had fans in the audience. And for me, who's been researching this for a long time, to see young Australians in their late teens familiar with Thai BL was a bit of a shock, because it's always been something that I haven't really encountered amongst Australians until this point. Now, within the literature on BL as a phenomenon, which I won't go into today, there's a lot of debate about whether or not BL, whether it be Thai BL, Japanese BL, produced in other contexts, whatever, is a media form that is divorced from political concerns. There's a lot of argument both amongst scholars and also amongst fans and detractors alike, that about whether or not BL is embedded within an LGBTQ plus politics, and whether whether the series should be considered positive or negative forces within broader queer activist politics. This is often framed rather narrowly in a debate over fantasy versus reality. So some people will say BL represents just fantasy and it's divorced from reality, the lived experiences of LGBTQ plus communities. I'm not going to wade too much into this debate today, but I think that what my aim here today is, when I talk about activism and then broaden that to think about the global ramifications of this within Thailand's so-called soft power projects, I'm trying to emphasize that I'm not arguing that BL plays a direct role in constructing politics or directing politics. I'm rather interested in how the fantasy culture that is surrounding BL intersects with political changes within the Thai cultural context, and then how that is globalized. So, at the heart of BL is a phenomenon known as the kujin. I've got it written there on the side, the imagined couple. So, two actors who perform in a variety of different shows over and over again, male-male intimacy and romance, and that they also perform this off the stage and invite fans to not only engage with homoeroticism as depicted within the context of a series, but also to engage with this in the fandom culture between the two actors themselves. So we call this practice shipping or coupling in English, which is the practice of imagining idols or actors in romantic and sexual relationships, often of the same sex, though not exclusively. And shipping culture is really what drives BL and what makes the fans so excited and so engaged with the broader popular culture form. Now, over the past decade and a half, the media industries of Thailand have been increasingly investing into BL as a mechanism to produce and promote talent, to produce a new form of celebrity, these Kujin, and they're doing so following patterns that we've already seen established in the South Korean context, as well as the Japanese context, within which kind of homoerotic performance and calls towards shipping are utilized to strategically interest particularly middle-class female consumer bases, but also other consumer bases, including LGBTQ plus consumers. What Thailand innovated, however, was transforming this production system, which I call the BL machine, from something that is implicit to something that is explicit. So in the Korean and Japanese idol systems, for instance, everything is supposed to be kind of hush hush behind closed doors, whereas in Thailand, it's very much front and center. We saw this particularly, this machine particularly developed and perfected, I would argue, by GMM TV, which is a subsidiary of GMM Grammy, which is one of Thailand's largest producers of music and series and basically popular content. But they kind of set the mold, and then we've seen other companies also run with it and build kind of nuance it and transform it in interesting ways. At the heart of the BL machine is a concept known as fin. So this is the feeling or the experience or the effective response that a fan kind of experiences when they are engaging with acts of homoeroticism, or when they're watching a Thai BL series, or when they're seeing their favorite Kujin couple interacting on stage or in real life. They will be like, "Oh, fin mark." Fin is a slang term. It derives from the English term finale, and it was actually originally gay slang, used to refer to orgasm. So rather than the typical Thai, and forgive the crudeness, they would say "set lao," which means I'm done. They would say, "Oh, fin, I'm finished, I'm done." But the term fin to mean to come or to orgasm or to feel like I feel a sense of release and satisfaction became taken up by fan cultures in the 2000s, particularly Korean fans of Korean popular content, so Korean dramas and K-pop, to describe their own sense of enjoyment of media, particularly of shipping content. And it has thus become the kind of formal mechanism through which fans in Thailand express their enjoyment of BL. And BL as a production system is all about producing fin and then taking those excited responses to homoerotic performance, to idol couples, to basically the celebrity culture, and then find ways to, well, to be blunt, this is about making money, so they find ways to monetize the feeling of fin. One of the most classic examples is advertising. You walk through Bangkok, even to this day, and you will see Kujin, both BL idols and GL idols nowadays, advertising basically everything you could possibly think of. My favorite advertising campaigns that I've encountered over the longest years there were a BL couple, actually Tainu, my favorite. They were advertising condominiums. And then there was also someone who, some BL idols who were involved in selling calculators during the back to school period in 2001. So here's an example of a now defunct ship, Bright Wind, that were very popular about 6 years ago, but not so much nowadays. If you're interested to learn more about this, my colleague Shabonin Swetenant and I have written about this advertising culture quite extensively and how fin plays a role in it. The reason I bring up advertising is because in the logics of the system, fin and homoerotic performance is designed to make money for the corporations, right? But I'm going to show you how it became increasingly implicated in activism and political discussion throughout the evolution of Thai BL. Okay, so we're talking about activism today, right? We're talking about LGBTQ plus politics and marriage equality. So what I thought I'd do is I'd just show you a select a number of scenes from some BL series that were broadcast in the lead up to and immediately after the legalization of marriage equality in Thailand, just to kind of show you how fantasies of marriage equality and broader political activism have formed part of BL culture in Thailand, just to begin disrupting this idea of the fact that BL as a genre is divorced from politics. Now, apologies in advance for people who are joining who are not Thai language literate. Because I was preparing this presentation for a Thai university, I actually have just used versions of the videos that don't have subtitles. But if you are a fan or you're familiar with these shows, I think that you'll be able to follow along already. So probably the most seminal example of this was a series called Not Me that was broadcast in 2021. This is a show that was grounded specifically in a very activist moment in Thai youth culture when we saw towards the end of 2020 and throughout 2021, young people agitating around various political issues, some of which I cannot mention, of course, since I'm delivering a talk to a Thai audience right now. But some of them were also related to broader questions of human rights, including LGBTQ plus rights. And Not Me is quite famous in the industry, amongst activists and amongst fans, for depicting an explicit queer activist moment in one of its episodes. So I'm just going to show you that queer activist moment. Hopefully the video plays along. But this is already beginning to show you just how much LGBT activism can be embedded within a BL narrative, which is more than just, I would argue, simple romance, even though that is an important part of it. So here is a brief episode within which the main characters, portrayed by the Kujin of Gun, encounter each other at one of the many street protests depicted in the show with an explicit LGBTQ plus focus. I mean, it cannot be more explicit than what you're about to see. So hope of time I will cut that down a little bit, but eventually they come together and it's a moment not only where we see activism, but we also see a romantic interaction between the Kujin and the characters in the show. And this linking of activism and romantic representation is very common. Now, let's fast forward a little bit more to the broadcast of this series called In English, A Boss and a Babe, starring Force Book, which is a second generation BL Kujin at GMM TV. So the reason that I want to show you this series, and once again, it doesn't have any subtitles, so apologies in advance. But what you're going to see is the beginning of the second episode of the show, actually, which focuses on this young guy here. His name's Book. His character's called Cher. He's an intern in the company of this guy. Force is the actor, the boss, basically. And Gun is the character's name. And basically, he's just had some lunch with his new colleagues, and he encounters some office gossip, some very nasty office gossip that is warning him to be careful of his boss because his boss is gay and may harass Cher. Cher responds very kind of calling them out for being homophobic, then asks them if they like BL series, to which they agree that they do, and then he criticizes them for having negative opinions towards LGBTQ plus people, ending by arguing that they should sign a marriage equality petition, just like he did if they were fans of BL. So
ตัวละครพฤติกรรมและระยะในการในที่สุดผม
you don't need any.
เป็นข้อเสียของการไม่ขอผมก็ไม่เคยลองกินเหมือน
Oh no. Yeah. Okay. I just remembered while I was watching that some of the extra context of this episode was also that it was broadcast immediately after the Constitutional Court had struck down some activist petitions around marriage equality with some extraordinarily, shockingly homophobic logic. So in this context, um, the character of Cher also criticizes the government for being wunwai, being extremely disorderly, and also calling people out for having old dinosaur-like mindsets, which was a very careful critique of the government of the time. Okay. Now, when I was putting together the initial version of this presentation, as well, it was during just after marriage equality had been announced in 2024, and I just want to show a last little scene from a series called One D Good Day. It didn't necessarily resonate particularly strongly with many Thai audiences, unfortunately, but it did include a really interesting episode. In the sense that on the episode that was aired immediately after the announcement of the legalization of marriage equality included a scene within which the sub couple, so not the main couple, but the sub couple, watch the announcement and then propose marriage to each other. So it's interesting because the scene was filmed immediately after the announcement of marriage equality and then produced to kind of introduce marriage equality into the episode itself. So we'll just, I actually don't think I have enough time. I just had a look at the clock and I'm kind of running behind time. So we're just going to keep blasting forward. Sorry. Because what I do want to talk to you about is we've talked about representation of marriage equality in BL series, but I now want to talk about the activism of the idols who appear within the series. And I'm going to talk about two couples here, two couples whose work I was following in the immediate lead up to marriage equality in Thailand, who were very famous for being quite vocal and supportive of marriage equality. These are Earth Mix on the left. This is a couple from GMMTV, and Z Nunu on the right from a company called Dumundi. Two extraordinarily popular BL Kujin couples in Thailand. So first of all, I want to talk about once again that relationship between Finn and activism, the entanglement of homoerotic excitement and activist conversation. So within their debut series together, which was aired in 2020, Z Nunu, Z Pruk on the right, and Nunu Chawadin, the series was actually, it was called Cutie Pie the series, and it was actually all about marriage. These two characters were betrothed through some kind of business relationship. Naturally, there was no formal legal marriage equality. But there was symbolic marriage within the series. But we see a conversation in one of the latter episodes within which the two men are they've just had some, let's say, some fun, intimate times together, and then they're relaxing together in a bathtub, and they're having a conversation where Z's character, Tien Lee, is his name, talks about I want to marry you, telling his lover that he wants to marry him. And the younger boy says, but we're living like a married couple together already. Why should we get married, basically? To which Tien Lee's character, so the older character portrayed by Z, responds, if we can be married legally like in other countries, you will be entitled to all my rights and benefits. So here we have embedded within a BL series and in an intimate scene that is designed to evoke that emotional response to activism, we see this being utilized as a form of kind of political discourse and consciousness raising. Indeed, the final episode of the series, which once again aired before marriage equality was legalized, ended with these two characters. They're very wealthy, I should mention. So they basically festooned the whole of central Bangkok, the area around Siam Paragon, so Siam Centre, Siam Station, with marriage equality statements, whilst they kind of kiss each other and reaffirm their marriage and their commitment to each other. Once again, utilizing the show as a platform to intervene into the debates that were currently raging in Thailand around marriage equality. Likewise, we see a somewhat softer touch coming out of GMM TV. So Earth Mix, Z News series was quite explicit, whereas Earth Mix, they were a little bit more uh, I would say subtle, or perhaps a little bit less authentic, one could say. But basically, the two have had a regular variety show called Earth Mix Space, and they staged in an episode of this series a pre-wedding photo shoot. Now, the show actually primarily functions as an opportunity to sell products. And in this show, in this episode, they were actually selling Cornetto ice creams. But this was staged within the context of a broader kind of marriage ceremony in which they were preparing to get married, like preparing to have a stage a wedding basically between each other. And if you remember at the beginning of the presentation, I showed a picture of these two proudly waving a pride flag at the very beginning. That's at the end of this series. Now, I'm sure some of you are thinking, but aren't these production companies merely doing this in order to get money? Isn't this pink washing? Isn't this something problematic? The fact of the matter is, with these two couples, they come to the screen with a pre-existing and pre-established commitment to political activism. So, for instance, Mix and Nunu were both quite prominent proponents of various different what are they called? Petitions around marriage equality, and pushing these forward together in collaboration with their fans. And indeed, they were also active participants in the broader Thai youth protests that I was talking about earlier in the 2020s, so 2020 to 2021, where young people were taking to the streets to agitate around political kind of questions and human rights, including LGBTQ plus rights. And basically, the stars like Earth Mix, Z Nunu were actively contributing, along with many other stars involved in the BL industry, to these political statements and to this political moment, even though to do so was to put them up against the kind of regime and the kind of normative structures of society. So I'm going to just kind of skip ahead. Here's some discussion of Mix being incredibly, Mix in particular is well known for being quite vocal around questions of human rights and so forth. But what I want to emphasize is that eventually, when marriage equality was achieved in 2024, a lot of this activism that was emerging amongst fans of BL was pushing stars to become taking up increasingly explicit stances around marriage equality that was being pushed forward as a form of kind of good corporate governance, if you will. So fans were basically like, if you're going to portray BL relationships, if you're going to portray queer relationships, then you need to be committed to queer activism, and the shows need to be engaged with these political questions. And the industry responded. So this is an instance where the fans' interest in activism pushed the industry to engage carefully. Okay. I also think that one of the things that really interested me in 2024 was that BL actors were actually participating very strongly in Bangkok Pride, and we've seen this continuing on until till this day, with the Ministry of Culture partnering with various BL production and GL production companies, and then having BL and GL celebrated within kind of activist movements and moments like a Pride parade.
Let go, yeah.
Oh, hey. So let's now expand in the last 15 minutes. Let's expand this from beyond the Thai borders to think about, okay, so if marriage equality and activism is so important, and these kind of activist potentials are emerging within the context of Thailand, what does it mean when the Thai state looks towards a queer popular culture form that has become globally popular? Here's just a quick map to show you how diverse the spread of the wind is what we call it. So the spread of Thai popular culture has become. So In the 2020, from 2023 onwards, we began to see, actually 2022 onwards, I would say, we began to see a lot of debate about, okay, so BL is popular around the world. Clearly, it is a form of soft power. It is something that the Thai government should be seizing as a resource to promote itself abroad. And this became a really, really big debate, and it continues on to today, actually. So, Thailand's hottest new soft power, boys love. Once again, just some quick definitions. Soft power. The reason I want to define soft power is because the Thai government often doesn't use it properly themselves. So, according to Joseph, soft power is the ability of a nation to attract and to present itself as being desirable to foreign audiences, in contradistinction to the politics of coercion, forcing people through either military means or economic means to follow the agenda of a nation state. The reason I bring this up is because soft power is often misapplied in Thailand as a branding exercise. So you'll see something like Thai BL is soft power. No, that doesn't make sense. What we should be saying is that Thai BL is a resource for building and expanding Thai soft power. Okay, so just quickly putting that on the table. So what we've seen over the past few years as Thai BL and GL have become incredibly popular around the globe is that it has been entangled into the cultural diplomacy and the creative content strategy of the Thai state. This was particularly true during the Shinawat regime under Paetongtarn Shinawat. And whilst the term soft power has been booted by Anutin and Bumjai Thai, the new political kind of powers that be, they are still interested in cultural diplomacy and building it up. They just don't use the term soft power, which in some ways is not such a bad thing. We saw immediately after, in 2023 and 2024, the establishment of the Thailand Creative Culture Agency, which was modeled on the Korea Creative Content Agency as an opportunity to kind of build up Thailand's capacity to have a robust and well-developed creative content industry. And they would then were basically kind of an agency that was designed according, this is a very loose translation of their mission statement at the time. It was an is to have absolute authority to support all soft power industries, whatever that means, whether it is liberating freedom, unlocking laws, breaking down barriers, supporting capital, expanding exports through various foreign policies, managing a budget sufficient for the task of creating an entire ecosystem to create a rapid growth of the industry. Various different elements of the Thai creative industries were tapped as resources potentially for building soft power, with television and film, not Thai BL specifically, but Thai television and film being one of the 8 pillars. Theme of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs utilize Thai BL and GL as a mechanism to reach out to various different audiences around the globe, recognizing the huge fandom that exists for Thai BL and GL, and then seeking to use this as an entry point to connect with local audiences and then build up traction to Thailand, particularly celebrating Thailand's potential as a soft power kind of, sorry, not soft power, as an attractive state. So here, last year, I supported the Royal Thai Consulate General in Sydney in the development and delivery of Australia's first kind of official BL and GL fan meet. I actually, rather embarrassingly, was the MC at the event. But this is just one example of many, many, many initiatives that are being run around the globe by the diplomatic arms of the Thai government to utilize BL and GL to attract people to Thailand. We've also seen Thai BL become entangled into advertising campaigns. This is before they decided to go all in with Lisa, which is what they're doing now. And I have thoughts about that if you want to talk about it. But basically, for instance, when Thai BL became quite popular in Japan in 2020, 2021, GMMTV's talents worked together with the Tourism Authority of Thailand under the Amazing Thailand umbrella campaign to develop a variety of basically advertising campaigns geared towards a a Japanese audience to use BL to promote, for example, Chiang Mai, which is the hometown of Taiwan. And then you have like these ads that are replete with Finn and replete with all of these homoerotic moments and interactions between Kujin that are also designed to advertise Thailand as a tourist destination to BL fans and then make BL fans aware of Thai traditional culture as well. This doesn't mean that the soft power initiatives have been necessarily successful. I've already kind of emphasized that and intimated that this term soft power has been misunderstood, particularly during the Shinawat kind of regime, because soft power was often just misunderstood to be a branding exercise. I have this kind of, I keep a list of things that have been labeled as soft power, whatever that means, my favorite example is Isan beef is Thai soft power. Elephant pants is Thai soft power. Mudeng is Thai soft power. The most recent one is Songkran water fights are Thai soft power, which, you know, it doesn't, what I'm suggesting is that these could be resources that help build attraction to and help develop soft power, but they are not soft power in themselves. And the issue that we saw with the initial attempt to build up Thai soft power under Tucker and the previous government was that soft power was typically used as a branding exercise. And there was very little understanding of what it actually meant to engage with a global audience and build up the politics of attraction that is so central to a robust and influential soft power strategy by a nation state. So you have all of these kind of PR campaigns that are very divorced from the desires and needs of what fans around the world want. So for example, you know, you'd have things where fans want to learn more about the BL industry and they want to visit Bangkok. And then you have Thai BL adjacent soft power campaigns that were all about selling, you know, basket making in Ubon Ratanatani or something, which had nothing to do and it had a huge disconnect between fan desires and realities. Also, despite the fact that Tucker was designed to boost and develop the creative content industries, there was no actual attempt to do this through the release of funds, through the introduction of various different support mechanisms of the Thai creative industries. It's also important, if we go back to Joseph Nye and his initial development of soft power, he does list a few criteria that states need to possess in order to be effective mobilizers of soft power within today's world. He argues that a state must have strong democratic institutions and a strong positive record of protecting human rights. Nye fundamentally dismisses any attempt by an authoritarian regime to have soft power because he argues that any soft power produced by an authoritarian regime is actually inauthentic. And it is important that a state allow a society to criticize, civil society and its press to criticize the government. These are all essential to an effective soft power strategy, according to Joseph Nye. And I don't think I need to tell those of you in the room that unfortunately Thailand doesn't necessarily measure as well on all of these metrics as it possibly could. So this means that there are potential issues at the state societal level. And yet at the same time, we have a question around soft power as a queer force. Because one thing that I feel that Thailand should do more is invest into the recognition that BL and GL have been transformative for disenfranchised people around Asia, around the world, who look to Thai media and its vibrant celebrity culture as an escape from local systems of homophobic oppression, transphobic oppression, etc., and to move away from a predominantly market-driven kind of pink-washed attempt to utilize queer culture just to kind of sell things towards actually engaging and celebrating very realistically and truthfully the queer potentials of BL, GL, Thai popular culture, and indeed Thai society for those people who live around the world who lack access to affirming media and affirming social contexts. So, as I mentioned to you all, I was doing field work in the Philippines towards my third book during Pride Month 2024, when marriage equality was achieved in Thailand. I've written extensively about the Philippines as a site for fandom for Thai BL in my book, in previous publications, etc. And what's important about the Philippine context is that within the Philippines, we see a large number of LGBTQ plus fans. So members of the LGBTQ plus community who have become attracted to Thai BL because it is meaningful and it disrupts their experiences of homophobic and heteronormative oppression in the Philippine context. So when I was making all of my tweets and talking about how exciting and fantastic it was that Thailand had reached marriage equality, I was in the Philippines and I was interacting with Filipino fans of various different Asian media, and I was beginning to see Filipinos engage with my context. So here's a Filipino, he's actually a fellow scholar friend of mine, Luis Sanchez, and his response to Thailand, having marriage equality, sana all, which means I want that too. I wish that was for us. Another fan who could be in the room with us right now, seeing this post and saying, when will it be our turn? Filipino flag. No pride here. Soon, I hope. And then things are dismal. We can't even legal divorce. It's brutal out here. What we saw and what I've seen consistently throughout my engagement with BL fandom in the Philippines, in China, in Latin America, all over the world, is that global BL fandom, Thai BL fandom, and GL fandom is engaged in this kind of aspirational and transformative practice. There's this desire that sits at the heart of fans who look towards BL as this resource to combat everyday marginalization and discrimination, and they view BL as a political force for making the world a better place. My major contribution, often when I'm invited into debates over soft power policy or cultural diplomacy or the promotion of Thai media around the globe, with whether that be Thai media producers or Thai government agencies or fans, is to celebrate this aspect of the Thai wind and center it first and foremost in any soft power activity, rather than the rather facile and not particularly useful or successful nation branding that we have been seeing up until the present day. Whether I am listened to, however, is still an open question. Okay, I think that's it. Yes, I am hitting 11 o'clock on the dot. I know that there was some chitter chatter in the chat. I'm not able to see the chat, unfortunately, but I hope you enjoyed that presentation, and I'm looking forward to an open discussion. Thank you. Ooh. Ooh.
Thank you, Dr. Baudinette, for the wonderful and provocative critique and also presentation. We have seen some examples especially in some of the series that explicitly talk about some of the political discourses that are ongoing in the country at that moment or when the series was airing. So your point about the Thai state attempting to resource LGBTQ plus rights as a soft power asset while fans demand genuine accountability is a fascinating tension. So before we jump into the moderated Q&A session, I do have some requests from our participants. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat box. And if you like to speak directly, you can use the hand raise feature and I'll unmute you from my end and you can ask your questions or share your thoughts directly. Or if you don't have any questions, you just want to share some thoughts, please feel free to do so as well. So in order to get us started, you spoke about the political concerns embedded in BL. Do you feel like real-world political mandate for idols is becoming a requirement for staying relevant, or does it ever backfire on the show's popularity or the idol's popularity itself?
So, has there ever been any instances of backlash when we see political statements invested into the series?
Not so far.
None. At least in the Thai context, which I think I'm most kind of confident to speak about.
Mhm.
In the sense that I mentioned this kind of briefly in passing, but I'll reiterate it now because it's important, is that one of the reasons why we saw the rise of very explicit representations of political kind of activism and series deliberately and explicitly addressing this kind of questions around marriage equality, particularly as the debates raged rather prominently in Thai society, was because fans were demanding the series do so, right? So it was just good sense from a marketing perspective. I actually think about this as an instance of fan activism, that the industry, which actually, it emerges from a fairly conservative space within Thai society. For those of you who are familiar with the Thai media landscape, GMM Grammy, not so much GMM TV, but GMM Grammy is a more conservative company. They're interested in making money. They have friends with powerful players in Thai society, the so-called Konyai, and hence GMM for the first few years of its engagement with BL were hesitant to engage with political questions. Whereas a series like Not Me, I cannot stress enough, just when that was aired, how revolutionary and risky it was actually to air. Because that series was extraordinarily political. And this was at a time when young people were taking to the streets to call out and critique establishments in Thailand that even to this day you cannot legally critique. I hope that makes clear what I'm referring to. And there are ways in which that series participates in those activist moments without falling afoul of the various different legal mechanisms in Thai society that make that impossible. So that series was hugely, hugely, hugely brave. And that's why it's become such a touchstone for local fans. And local fans, to this day, they are invested in the idea that BL should be politically aware and engaged. They are not divorced or some kind of Delulu group of high school girls who don't think about things, which is often how they sometimes get portrayed in both domestic and international fan debates. But they are highly engaged, politically savvy, and activist consumers who, through the pleasurable practice of shipping, also engage with very important political questions. So no backlash, at least in Thailand, and that's all I feel comfortable talking about.
All right, thank you for answering the questions. We do have some questions in the chat box, but I would like to invite Wendy Fan. I don't know if I pronounce your name correctly. You have your hand raised. I'm gonna ask you to unmute and feel free to share your question or thoughts.
Hi, can you hear me? This
Yes.
is Wendy from Hong Kong. Like within the GMM3 universe, they recently added the mascot as children of the couples. Like, do you think like to what extent does this practice reinforce like heteronormative frameworks or stereotypes a bit? And how does it reflect the commercialization and expansion of the BL and GL industry?
Okay, thank you for the question. I also saw a question about representation in the chat from someone just asking, do the representational politics of BL, reinforce particular kind of class and other forms of society? The answer is yeah, the representations aren't perfect, and no representation is perfect. There's no such thing as perfect representation in any form of media. And I think that we need to remember what BL primarily is. It's romance media, and it's supposed to be enjoyable and escapist. So, whilst I talk about the integration of activism into BL, I think it's also important to remember that BL is not activist media, right? So there's an important distinction between the two. So it can't do everything. And my rather provocative response to questions around representation in media tends to be, I don't particularly think it's a useful line of inquiry because when we focus too much on representation, we forget that there's a consumer who is engaged in decoding that and interpreting that representation and then building upon that representation and responding to it either positively or negatively. So, BL is romance fiction. Romance fiction is supposed to be desirable. Romance fiction has a certain escapist element. Does the ways in which homoerotic relationships in BL and GL get depicted sometimes skew away from the lived reality of some people? Yes, of course it does, because no media can represent everything. But BL isn't guilty alone in that. One of the things that often really bugs me is you'll get people talking about like, oh, the seme-uke rule, the top-bottom rule is really strict in BL, and that's like, kind of doesn't represent reality. Well, the same is true of gay porn, and people don't have that argument about gay porn, right? So I think that my really big kind of provocative response to this is like, let's move away from kind of purity politics and authenticity politics in our discussions of representation and think about the actual effects of the media in society and how people can, agitate. I hope today I've given you a demonstration of how fans, seeing the fact that BL was not engaging with LGBTQ plus issues, pushed them to do so, right? So likewise, we see similar things happening with discussions over representation, with representations of class. There's a whole subset of series that have been looking at representations of disability that actually, and I think I see him in the chat. I have a wonderful PhD student working with me at Macquarie who's looking at these questions and doing fantastic job showing how actually BL has diversified in its representation, not the opposite, which is often how people tend to assume it is going. So I hope that answers your question, Wendy. And there was, as I said, another question in the chat that I noticed that was around the same issue.
All right, thank you. I'll group some of the questions together because they are in similar themes. So this person asks, you talk about soft power and the term being misused. So what do you think about the term queer baiting? They've always understood it as a marketing and creative practice in media where creators hint at but never depict same-sex romantic relationships in media. But in fandom spaces, they see Kujin being labeled as queer baiters when they kept up their side of the bargain by doing a BL series. And there's also another question where BL idols campaigns in Thailand, are they genuinely contributing to LGBTQ plus acceptance, or are they creating a superficial form of representation that feels conservative resistance? So I do feel like these questions overlap each other.
So I will answer the first one, which I think is from Taj in the chat. First of all, yes, fans misuse the term queerbaiting all the time. I'm sure there's a whole bunch of my friends in this chat right now. Jay is probably one of them, giggling to themselves because they know exactly what I'm going to say. So, Taj, your definition of queerbaiting is correct. Fans use it incorrectly in this kind of attempt to discredit the activism or discredit BL or kind of police sexuality or so forth. That's not what queerbaiting is. Queerbaiting is having a show selling itself as if it is having queer content and then not delivering it. BL and GL cannot by definition be queerbaiting content because these boys and girls are like making out and kissing and doing all sorts of things. It is queer, so it's not queerbaiting. Thanks for that, Taj. The other question, does this produce superficial activism? What does superficial activism mean? I don't understand that element of the question, to be quite honest. The fact of the matter is that we see, once again, my aim in this presentation is not to demonstrate a cause and effect relationship. I am not saying BL had activism around marriage equality, thus marriage equality was achieved in Thailand. That's not true, because any kind of cause and effect investigation of these questions doesn't really get to the heart of what was happening. What I'm trying to demonstrate here is that BL was entangled in and part and parcel of a broader cultural moment within which we see activism rise, and we see a consciousness raising around LGBTQ plus issues, human rights, etc., emerge in the early 2020s in Thailand, and then transform into a variety of different political and social transformations, of which marriage equality is just one of many. If this is a question about do I think the activism of idols such as Earth Mix and Z New New is, a legitimate form of activism, or are they merely just doing this in order to make money? I think that that's a very mean-spirited question to start with. And second, I don't think it's a productive question because I'm not going to engage myself in some kind of authenticity politics debate. I don't think it's useful because, first of all, marriage equality has been achieved. So what's the point in debating this? Second, um, are these people continuing to engage in various forms of consciousness raising and promotion of various different LGBTQ plus issues, either through their performances or through their personal engagement with the political process or public discourse? Yes, they are, because they're human beings. And I think that's my only response to that question. Once again, I think it's I don't mean to be nasty, but this in the interest of this being a research seminar, as an expert, I would often say that some of these questions are kind of like missing the point, right? By focusing on some of these questions around authenticity, or trying to narrow human life in all of its complexity into a particular ideological framing, we miss the rich tapestry of the cultural moment. And this is me as an anthropologist speaking, I think. So I think that's probably, I'm going to draw a line on these kinds of questions because that's where my stance is.
All right. So we do have another question on soft power. Since Thailand has tried to promote BL as a form of soft power, but may not fully meet NICE criteria for soft power, do you think the influence of Thai BL will eventually come to an end, or is there still strong potential for it to keep moving forward?
Thank you, Ajahn Anason. So this is a good question. So first of all, I think that when I think about the broader cultural diplomacy efforts of the Thai state, what the various different industries are kind of investing into, there has been a broadening beyond BL and GL, though it is still predominantly led by BL. To consider other elements of cultural production, most importantly nowadays T-pop, so Thai idol pop music. And I think that there is, a lot of potential still for Thai popular culture and also Thailand's creative industries to be utilized, and that this massive fandom that exists around the globe that has emerged not because of the actions of the Thai state, but actually almost despite the actions of the Thai state, mandates the need for a kind of robust and well thought out cultural diplomacy. In my advocacy and in my consultancy work, as well as my scholarship, I hope to be able to provide resources that will help the Thai state or Thai creative content agencies properly globalize and engage with fans and develop a more successful kind of soft power initiative. What I would say is that the current government, and particularly the Ministry of Commerce, Ministry of Culture, are doing a much better job now than what was actually being done under the previous government. And that's because they're no longer doing things in flashy kind of branding exercise sorts of ways. And it's because they're actually beginning to think about some of the fundamentals of what soft power actually is, according to NICE. So people to people exchange, imagination, engaging people, education, pedagogy, and supporting various forms of interaction. I think that Thai media is just becoming more and more powerful around the globe. It's certainly the case that, you go onto social media and look at debates over people who engage with various forms of Asian popular culture. And you see a lot of people talking about how they have, dropped K-pop and now they listen to T-pop, or I used to love Japanese BL, now I like Thai BL. That's a really, really powerful and ongoing phenomenon. I don't think that's going away. I think that yes, what we're seeing now, and I'm kind of being optimistic and hoping that we're going to continue to see a more robust and well-developed soft power initiative. I can say that based on experiences I had when I was visiting Bangkok in December last year, as a visiting scholar at Kasetsart University, and I had meetings with various different organizations. Things look better now than they did when I first started consulting about 4-5 years ago. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, Atan, but that's my thoughts. I guess the answer is yes.
Thank you, Tom. You mentioned earlier that fans come from different popular culture like Japan pop and also Thai pop, and there's a question about fan agency here. What do you think that the extent the fan agency have taken with respect to BL fandoms? Like, it could be any fandom, not just Thai BL fandom. What are the best instances of fan agency you have seen? And also a similar question is the distinctive features of Thai BL series. What makes it appealing to nearly all audience around the world? You've mentioned several continents in your presentation. So these participants would like to know fan agency and the appealing of Thai BL to global audiences.
So to answer that question about fan agency, which I'm not quite sure what fan agency is supposed to mean in this context, but I guess we're talking about the ability of fans to shape and mold the industry itself. I think that the presentation fairly clearly demonstrates that perhaps the most important and successful instance of this was the fact that fans in Thailand were able to get the industry to engage in political questions when traditionally they didn't. That's a really good example of fan agency, or fan activism is a term that I would prefer to use. I hope that answers that particular question. What makes Thai BL distinct to other BL kind of industries around the world? Well, first and foremost, as I mentioned to you, with regards to live action, so the idea that it's all very explicit and like the rules are there on the table. You kind of sign up. It's like, here's a couple, they're gonna perform for you, you're gonna ship them. All of the rules are there and it's very explicit, and the fandom culture is very logical, unless you happen to be a person who cannot follow logical instructions and then fall into some kind of delusion. But if you are able to escape that, fandom Thai BL fandom is actually very open and very explicit, and it's like basically what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to act is very open. I would also say that when you compare live action BL from Thailand to live action BL from South Korea or in Japan, for instance, which often is based on local webtoons or manga comics. It isn't necessary. Like I don't want to draw a firm line and say that like Thai BL is more activist than Japanese or Korean BL. So I think that's a little bit of an overstatement. But we do see a tendency within Thai BL content to kind of engage in a more explicit way with political questions, whereas BL from South Korea and Japan, for instance, tends to do things implicitly, kind of in other ways. And then I'd also say that the activist questions are sometimes different. BL in Japan is very firmly embedded within women's consumer culture, and hence some of the questions that are emerging around BL's consumption and so forth in the context of Japan can sometimes be more geared to feminist questions. I don't know, like I don't want to kind of draw too strong a line. I would also say another thing that I would say, based on my research early on when Thai BL was first becoming popular, it was popular specifically because it was live action. So when Thai BL first came on the screen, on the scene, it was kind of like many consumers' very first engagements with live action BL, which was often restricted to comics or like often fan fictions of K-pop idols. So that kind of reality of it is exciting. And then if you compare the celebrity culture of Thailand to the celebrity cultures of all of the other BL industries around the world, including the Dangai industry of China, which I Danmei Dangai, I tend to kind of just put in a special little box because it is a little bit the particular because of the political situation under which it's produced. It's very open and it's very explicit. It's the only industry where shipping and everything is like on the tin, if you will, except maybe Taiwan. I also will say that there's just something to be said about the kind of stories and the quality of the productions, and it just tends to be appealing. And it also just happens to have a pre-existing fan base, and when a pre-existing fan base exists, it's easier for people to become increasingly engaged with it. So I don't know if that answered the question very well, but there's some initial thoughts.
All right. That's a very comprehensive answer, and that's also a reflection that one of our participants shared that in Japan, BL fans and LGBTQ activists find themselves at odds because there's a perception that BL fans do not understand the realities of LGBTQ community and are simply consuming these stories for their own entertainment. And there's also a quick question asking about statistics about number of same-sex marriage in Thailand after the broadcasting of series embedded with the activism ideas. From my understanding of your presentation, most of these activism series were already uploaded way before the same-sex marriage, which was last year. So I've not seen any similar series yet right after the legalization of same-sex marriage.
Yeah, so what we now see in Thai BL production is that marriage is just kind of like a logical end game because now it's legal. So because this stuff is romance fiction, and romance fiction classically tends to end with marriage, well, now it can end with marriage, so why not? I actually would point to that what became interesting to me is like this year. Late last year towards this year, GMMTV had a series that just finished this weekend actually called My Romance Scammer, which is all about like people being tricked into getting married. And this is actually a very common trope in Thai media. And the fact that we can now have a BL version of that is an indicative of just how normative like marriage equality has become in Thai society. It's just like something that's so obvious within the context of stories. Whether or not like this is a question about like what statistics have been, in terms of registration for marriage equality and trying to find some kind of cause and effect relationship, once again, that's not a useful question.
All right. Thank you very much for all of your questions. If you have any more questions, I think we do have time for one or two more questions. You can just use the raise hand feature and quickly share your thoughts, or you can just type it into the chat box.
Even reflections or anything. I saw someone, thank you, Stevanos. I don't know if I pronounced your name wrong, but that's a lovely a reflection. Hello, fellow polka.
Okay, we do have a hand raised for Lucy Brooker. Do you want to ask anything? Yes. The floor is yours.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Hello. Thank you for your presentation. It's very interesting. I've actually carried out my own, at an undergraduate level, definitely not as advanced as you, my own research into transnational fandoms within BL, focusing on English speaking because my Thai is not that advanced at the current moment. And I do find it quite fascinating that even English speaking fans are like in England, we've had same-sex marriage since 2014, legalized in 2013. But even the people that I spoke to were overjoyed for Thailand having same-sex marriage. I think another BL that referenced same-sex marriage before it was legalized was Vice Versa, with
Oh,
Jimmy
yes,
C.
yeah.
When they
Yes.
went into the alternate universe, Forcebook made a cameo, and
Yeah.
they had like their little like wedding car,
Yeah.
and the person of the alternate universe was shocked that queer marriage wasn't legalized in their universe. I think
Yes,
that's
yes.
like
I was
yes.
going to say, I remember that because there's giving myself away as a Jimmy C slash Forcebook fan. There was like a very funny TikTok that they filmed as a response to that about
Oh,
putting a ring on it. Um,
um,
um, yeah. Sorry, I cut you off.
no, that's fine. Yes, I remember that TikTok. That was very goofy.
Yes.
But yeah, I think it's quite interesting to see how it has become TIBL has become so global. I've definitely
Mm,
recognized like in the past 2 years in England, like there have been fan meets in London. Like I
mm.
went to see Ofcon last year, um, and so I think it's quite interesting. I don't really have a question out of this.
Oh no,
Sorry.
you don't need to have a
Um,
question. As I said, we were inviting reflections.
yes.
I
Yeah.
I would say that one of the things that I've been quite interested in recently is the rise in and I use this term not because I like it, but because it's the term that often gets used in Thailand, what they call the prestigious Western markets. So there's this idea that if they can hold successful fan meetings in Western Europe and in the United States, that it's a good indication that Thailand's media has reached a kind of global level. I do worry sometimes about this kind of desperate need for Western approval, on the one hand, especially when you have massive markets like China and Japan eating out of your hand already. But it is quite true that we're seeing this kind of globalizing consumer kind of culture. As someone who first encountered this stuff back in the mists of time, I'm going to admit to being someone who's been engaging with it even longer than you, Stavanis. Um, that like, to me, it's just really gobsmacking to even hear about an off-gun fan meeting in like London, I assume, because I just remember when they debuted, and like it was that weird little thing that only I knew about. Um, and like it is a hugely, hugely, hugely globalizing force. Um, it reminds me, like, we're at the moment where I would say that Thailand has reached a level of global kind of popular culture penetration and recognition that puts it on par with some of the major players in Asia, such as Japan and Korea. And it will be interesting to see how that plays out over the next decade, I think. Because I know what the Thai government wants. They want to be number one. Can they get there? Well, we will see.
All right, I think we have come towards the end of our presentation and seminar today. So as we wrap up, I think it's clear that the intersection of BL culture and activism does not stop at just representation. Now it involves social justice mandates and the evolving identity of Thai media on the global stage. So a huge thank you to Dr. Thomas Baudinette for joining us today and providing such a rigorous framework for understanding this shift. We also thank the MAIDS-GRID faculty for the continued support of the student-led initiative. And of course, thank you to all participants coming from all over the world, watching us in different time zones. And for those interested in similar themes, please follow our future seminars. You can also visit our website at maids-chula.org for updates. So thank you for all of your time and your brilliant questions. This session is now officially closed. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Hey, bye bye.